Welcome to The Deep Dive, the place where we take a stack of compelling sources, articles, interviews, deep research, and we really just pull them apart to give you the shortcut to being truly well-informed.
And today we are plunging into a text that is less a novel and more of a chaotic crossroads of modern global anxieties. We're looking at Zayvon Vardanyan's The Brazilian Parrot.
It's a really layered text, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We're going to be prioritizing Zayvon's own insights from his interviews, but then we'll be cross-referencing those heavily with the actual narrative of the novel. What you have here is, well, it's a blueprint for understanding modern conflict.
It seems to blend so many things. High-stakes human rights activism, old-school investigative espionage.
And a brutally honest critique of contemporary Western hypocrisy. It's all in there.
So our mission today is clear. We need to extract that core narrative of, unexpected human connection, political resistance, and the shocking exposure of corruption.
But I think, more importantly, we have to grasp the tragic personal cost of speaking truth and the complex layers of loyalty, courage, and maybe even self-sabotage that define the protagonist, Peter Rue.
And that's where we start, right? With Peter Rue, who is already on the verge of collapse before the story even begins.
Completely. He's 45, a seasoned video journalist, but he's weary. He's staring at this dust-covered YouTube silver play button.
A symbol of success that's become something else entirely.
Exactly. It's a monument to his burnout, to creative exhaustion, to just stagnation. He's trapped in the monotony of a life that just doesn't excite him anymore.
The sources really highlight that feeling of internal chaos, don't they?
Yeah.
The chaos was there long before the actual bombing.
Yeah, he was desperate, just running on the treadmill of content creation until he gets that one email that changes everything, the interview request for Tamina Garani.
And it's not just another gig for him.
No, it's a lifeline.
Zayvon describes this work as sitting at a kind of crossroads of genre, and he doesn't really mince words about the paradox of it all.
No, he doesn't. He calls it a detective story where, and this is crucial, no one dies from the plot. Now, he does clarify that. He says the slow personal tragedy, the fact that Peter's trusted PI, Bob, is dying of leukemia, that doesn't count.
Because that's life's tragedy, not the plot's violence.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fascinating distinction to make right up front.
So the plot itself, with all its bombings and shootouts, is about this kind of existential victory, while the backdrop is just this slow, quiet, inevitable loss.
It sets the tone immediately. He calls it a modern fairy tale where good triumphs over evil, the corruption is exposed.
But, and this is the key, there's no conventional happy ending. Because life itself is messy. It's not a fairy tale.
And that paradox, winning the war but losing the peace, that is what we really need to unpack for you today. We're looking at the journey from burnout to targeted attack, the complexity of Baha'i persecution, the unmasking of a corrupt American senator, and ultimately the devastating aftermath for a hero who, it turns out, just couldn't handle stability. So the initial dynamic between Peter and Tamina is the true catalyst. Peter is desperate for fresh content, right?
Right. But when he finds her profile, this Persian-American Baha'i human rights activist, he's genuinely captivated. It's almost against his own cynical will.
It's more than fascination. It's an immediate transference of energy. He goes from total professional burnout, dragging his feet, to this immediate obsession.
You can see it in his reply to his assistant, Betty. It's such a great line.
It is. He says, Bet, I said, find an interviewee, not my soulmate. And that just signals immediately this isn't just a gig anymore. It's a profound, personal, and probably dangerous discovery for him.
He finds his fire again. He realizes he's on to gold, the kind of truth his channel and maybe his soul desperately needs.
But to understand the true gold, you have to understand Tamina's foundation. She's so much more than compelling content. She introduces the core ideological conflict of the novel.
Which is the struggle of the Baha'i faith against Iran's theocracy. And it's absolutely crucial for you to grasp that Baha'is are the single most persecuted religious minority in Iran.
Yeah, and we need to detail why that persecution is so unique and, frankly, so brutal. The Baha'i faith, which was established by Baha'u'llah in the 19th century, is seen as an independent new revelation.
It's not a reform movement within Islam.
No, not at all. It promotes these core tenets of unity, religious pluralism, gender equality, and universal education. All of these things are direct ideological threats to a ruling theocracy that's built on, centralized dogmatic power.
And that's the crux of it. Unlike other recognized religious minorities, Jews, Christians, or Zoroastrians, who are at least nominally protected by the Iranian constitution.
Right, even if it's just in theory.
The Baha'is are viewed as apostates. They have zero legal protection.
Which means the regime feels completely justified in denying them higher education, confiscating their properties, dismissing them from jobs, and yes, executing them.
And they do it by spreading these blatant, unsubstantiated lies, calling them spies for Israel, agents of the West.
The historical reality is just chilling, and the source material does not shy away from it. Since the 1979 revolution, over 200 Baha'is have been executed.
And there's that one specific devastating example that resonates so deeply within the Baha'i community.
The 10 Baha'i women. In 1983, 10 Baha'i women were hanged in Shiraz after they refused to recant their faith. And you have to understand, these weren't political agitators. They were teachers and nurses.
Executed simply for their religious beliefs. That is the gravity of the persecution that Temini is fighting against.
And her voice, forged in that fire, gives her activism this devastating edge when she confronts Western issues. And this brings us right to the novel's core critique, the paradox of Western selective outrage.
Zabin really highlights this in his interviews.
He does. She poses this rhetorical question that's genuinely difficult to answer without examining your own biases. She asks, why are Western feminists so vocal about, say, the 0 to 15% wage gap?
Which is an important issue, absolutely.
Yeah, of course. But why are they so vocal about that, yet remain largely silent on the brutal reality of forced child marriage? We're talking girls aged 9 to 12, public floggings, executions, and relentless systemic persecution happening every single day in places like Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan.
And her analysis of that silence is so sharp. She argues it's rooted in fear.
A fear of what, though?
Fear of appearing Islamophobic, or fear of jeopardizing sensitive geopolitical ties. If you criticize Saudi Arabia too loudly, you risk the stability of oil and defense relationships.
And if you criticize Iran or Pakistan, some activist circles will immediately accuse you of cultural insensitivity or, that dreaded label Islamophobia.
Tamina's position is that this selective outrage betrays the most oppressed. It prioritizes comfortable domestic political battles over literal life and death struggles happening globally.
She argues that real struggle should be directed where it's most needed, where the cost is highest, not simply where it's safe and comfortable for a Western commentator to weigh in.
It's that uncompromising moral clarity that defines her. It establishes Timony not just as an activist, but as a voice of profound ethical challenge.
And that makes her an instant magnet for the kind of focused danger that Peter, our weary journalist, very quickly finds himself exposed to.
This clear-cut idealism just collides with brutal real-world chaos in Chapter 2. After the interview, which was a success, Peter is packing up his gear.
His very expensive gear.
Right, and Temini steps back into her office for just a moment.
And that brief return, a moment of just forgetfulness, she'd forgotten her keys, that is the hinge of the entire story.
If she hadn't gone back for those keys.
The sources imply she would have been in her car right next to the bomb as it exploded. It was a perfectly timed, targeted attack. It was meant to kill her.
The explosion is just devastating. A massive shard of glass, it's described as nearly the length of her forearm, is sent flying.
But Peter reacts instantly. Instinctively. He has that trained protective impulse from his years as a war journalist.
Yeah.
He throws his body over hers to shield her from the blast.
It's such a visceral scene. It establishes the immediate physical cost of that instinct. The source material really draws your attention to Tamina's crimson top, a symbol of her fierce Persian identity.
And now it's stained with Peter's blood. He takes the full force of the shrapnel, and that massive glass shard lodges deep in his lower back.
But his military training kicks in, even as he's collapsing from shock and blood loss. He tells Timie, who's panicking and wants to pull it out.
Right, which is what anyone would want to do.
And he gives her this perfectly trained, brutal piece of advice. Don't touch it. Don't pull it out. It's holding the wound shut.
That single instruction saves his life. And it cements his image as this man of action and survival.
So while Peter's being rushed to the hospital, his mind, despite the pain, is already calculating. He contacts his trusted PI, Bob, using the coded phrase.
Brazilian Parrot.
Yeah, Brazilian Parrot.
Yeah.
We never learn the exact origin of this, peculiar code phrase, but its very absurdity suggests a deep history between them.
Oh, for sure. Maybe a shared memory from Iraq or a private joke from some less serious case. It's a way to signal extreme, immediate danger without alerting anyone else.
And it immediately shifts the genre from personal drama to high-stakes espionage.
And that espionage is met with immediate bureaucratic distrust. The next visitors Peter gets in the hospital are FBI agents Bradley and Morris.
Who immediately suspect him.
They accuse him of orchestrating the bombing based on a completely, almost maliciously misinterpreted comment from the raw interview footage.
They twisted a journalist's completely standard question. He had asked Jimene about previous threats against her life.
And they spun that into evidence of a conspirator threat. The novel really highlights the incompetence or maybe the predetermined agenda of the FBI.
And Peter, despite being severely injured, he just fires back with this blistering sarcasm and complete distrust.
Yeah.
He correctly points out they're just spinning words to fit a preconceived, easy geopolitical narrative.
If there's an explosion near an Iranian activist, it must be Iran. It's lazy.
But that suspicion is quickly shattered by this unexpected voice of pragmatic reason. Officer Jerry, from the Dallas PD. He's only there for basic security.
And this is such a crucial moment of validation for Peter.
Officer Jerry delivers a line that just cuts through all the bureaucratic nonsense. He says, and this quote is vital for understanding Peter's character.
What does he say?
He says, "In the face of danger, a man rushes to protect what matters most to him. But never, never does he shield someone he's supposedly meant to blow up. That's just not how it works."
It's just simple, common sense observation. It validates Peter's instinct, his sacrifice, and it forces the FBI to back down, at least for a little while.
It's the moment where, basic human empathy just triumphs over lazy institutional suspicion. Officer Jerry doesn't know them, but he knows how people behave in a crisis.
And speaking of distinctions, that distinction between the Iranian regime and the Iranian people is absolutely paramount to Mina. And we see Peter make a crucial error here.
In their coded call with Bob, right?
Yeah, he carelessly refers to Tamina as an anti-Iranian activist.
And she corrects him so sharply. It shows her pride, her nuance right there. She's emphasizing the very distinction the FBI is too lazy to make.
She tells him, "I'm not anti-Iranian. I'm against the sadistic government of Iran. Not the same as being against Iran, my roots, my culture."
It's a crucial clarification. Because the American audience, and certainly the fictional FBI agents, they tend to conflate the government with the nation.
But Tamina refuses to let the regime claim ownership of her identity, her Persian heritage, or her culture. It's a moment of really subtle, powerful resistance.
And Peter gets it. He had actually already shown that he understands this earlier when he was poking the FBI by sarcastically asking if all 90 million Iranians were involved in the attack.
Right, showing he gets the distinction between the regime and the people. He just momentarily forgot it in conversation, but he instinctively understood it when faced with the FBI's simplistic profiling.
So in the immediate aftermath, they have to figure out how to stay safe and how to stay together. And that's when Donna, the nurse, who's been touched by Peter's axe, steps in.
She suggests Tamina insist on staying with Peter for his recovery, providing this medical loophole for them to remain together, which the FBI grudgingly accepts.
It's this quiet act of supportive defiance from the nurse. It's really the first piece of necessary support Peter gets.
And this arrangement leads them to the safe house in Lost Pines Forest near Austin. So they're in this fragile alliance, supposedly under FBI protection.
But they're fully aware that the Bureau Now agents, Simpson and Rise, is still just fixated on the easy geopolitical Iranian angle.
Peter finds himself physically trapped, but his mind is completely free, and his skepticism is well-founded.
Jimene, while she doubts the regime itself would resort to such a clumsy domestic attack, she reveals a potential lead the FBI would never even consider: her distant relatives.
She confirms that some of her very distant relatives are Muslim, specifically Shia hardliners and fanatics who view her anti-regime activism and her very Baha'i identity as a profound betrayal.
And this is a critical nuance. You have to catch this. We need to stress that these hostile relatives are not Baha'is. They are hardline Shia who despise the Baha'i faith and her political stance.
It just underscores the complexity of Iranian society. It's not a monolith of opinion.
So while the FBI is running down their pre-approved easy foreign leads, Peter starts working. He arranges for Betty to deliver his gear.
And we're not just talking about a laptop here. This is his Starlink terminal, his green screen, and a secret stash of untraceable cash he calls his golden box.
He's building his command center right there from his sickbed.
And this is where his self-awareness and his injury, they converge into this brilliant strategy. He tells Temene he's working like Nero Wolfe,
the large, cerebral detective who famously solved complex cases without ever leaving his chair because of his physical size and intellectual prowess.
The illusion is just perfect. Peter is physically incapable of moving. He's trapped by this healing shard wound, but intellectually he is completely dominant.
And he calls Bob his Archie Goodwin.
His loyal, active, leg-working sidekick. It's this whimsical, self-aware nod to the detective genre that highlights Peter's genius and his necessary reliance on absolute trust.
And we see that connection get stronger when Temine asks about Bob. Peter explains their shared history, serving together in Iraq, fighting back-to-back in the crucible of war.
He says there is no one he trusts more than Bob, not even himself. It's a loyalty forged in absolute necessity, and it's stronger than self-preservation.
And it's amidst all this planning and high tension that we get this small, almost random detail that reinforces the theme of unexpected connection.
Oh, the hummingbird story.
Exactly. Timothy shares this charming, seemingly random anecdote of the hummingbird that bumped into her twice.
It's a moment of fragile, beautiful, normal interaction amid all the chaos, and Peter's first reaction is to dismiss it as a coincidence.
But then he stops himself. Maybe he's reflecting on the sheer unlikelihood of their own connection. He says there are no coincidences, only the illusion of coincidence.
Their bond, forged in an explosion, feels less like chance and more like a line drawn by destiny.
And that absolute loyalty to Bob pays off spectacularly. Bob's investigation focuses on the bomb itself, tracking the industrial-grade explosive residue.
He quickly discovers the material was stolen from a specific Minnesota mining company.
The genius detective work continues. Bob discovers that the company is owned by Samuel Hawkins,
The brother of the powerful Senator Grayson Hawkins. The explosive residue matches a rare, limited batch, making the connection just undeniable.
And this is the moment of the shocking twist, the pivot from a geopolitical mystery to just plain old domestic corruption.
Tamina immediately recognizes the name. She confirms that Senator Hawkins harassed her and other women when she worked for a Minnesota charity years ago.
And he used his political power and influence to aggressively silence her when she tried to speak out.
So the motive is revealed. It's not geopolitics. It's covering up sexual abuse and corruption using this clumsy, violent act.
This is what Peter sarcastically calls the Mickey Mouse theory of corruption in action.
Yeah, and we should probably pause and define that Mickey Mouse theory for you. It's the idea that powerful people believe their status, their money, their reputation makes them completely untouchable.
Which leads to sloppy, arrogant mistakes.
Exactly. In the novel, the source material shows that the Hawkinses were so brazenly arrogant in their cover-up that they didn't even bother to properly disguise the payments made to the hired thugs, this group called Black Proxy.
They just assumed their senatorial shield was enough to blind any investigators.
So with the motive and the means in hand, Temine gives Peter the final green light. She gives him this crucial, slightly bizarre code phrase to give Bob.
Brazilian parrots love eating slimy worms for breakfast.
Peter relays the plan to Bob, published the YouTube interview Tamina's story in primetime. Then Bob hits the media at midnight with the full, undeniable investigation report.
A coordinated, sudden, overwhelming strike.
The media strike is set for midnight, but Peter knows they cannot afford to stay put for another second. He initiates their escape plan immediately, knowing that the real enemy...
The mole within the FBI.
Right. He knows that mole will react instantly once the news breaks about Senator Hawkins.
Peter's preparation is meticulous. He needs to protect his closest ally, Betty. He fakes a phone call using coded language about taking an immediate vacation to tell her to go to a secure location.
He's ensuring his best friend is safe from the blowback.
Then he executes the escape from the safe house. He leaves the house, he cues up a movie with loud gunfire playing conspicuously, and he places the FBI security phones on the desk.
It's all designed to mask their departure and to confuse the inevitable mole within the security detail, just buying them critical time.
Their hike through the Lost Pines forest is arduous, and the sources really stress how difficult it was. Peter is moving on a body that is still healing from a massive, near-fatal puncture wound.
He's straining every muscle. Tamine eventually collapses from exhaustion, emotionally and physically drained.
And this is the moment Peter draws on his deep literary reserves, reminding us that he's a hero who is rooted in story. He lifts her onto his shoulders.
Referencing that great literary allusion from The Lord of the Rings, Mr. Frodo, I can't carry the ring for you, but I can carry you.
It's such a powerful moment of protective, sacrificial love. It's a clear commitment to their shared cause. He couldn't carry the burden of the mission forever, but he could physically carry her when she couldn't continue herself.
And their quick thinking is immediately validated. As they reach safety, news breaks that a shootout occurred at the safe house.
Peter's instincts and his quick actions saved them from the mole and the inevitable confrontation.
A confrontation that tragically involved agents X, Y, Simpson, and Rise shooting at each other in the confusion. They were victims of their own bureaucracy and Peter's calculated distraction.
So they make it to Austin, and Tamina gives the exclusive interview on CNN, exposing Grayson Hawkins and the attempted cover-up. This is her moment of triumph. Her voice is finally heard on a massive platform.
And it's a moment that immediately challenges the prevailing packaged media narrative. The anchor, trying to fit the story into a familiar box, tries to steer the conversation toward toxic masculinity.
But Tevany pivots brilliantly. She just rejects that simplistic pre-approved label. Instead, she praises Peter's protective masculinity, the willingness of a man to shield her with his body and then later to carry her on his shoulders.
She defines a protective hero, not a toxic aggressor.
And the network reacts instantly. The source material details that her unscripted praise just challenges the network's preferred, easily digestible narrative.
And the broadcast is cut immediately, a technical difficulties message. Her truth was too sharp, too human, too complex for the prepackaged media landscape they wanted to maintain.
But the immediate triumph turns to devastating horror right there in the reception area. Peter, having severely strained his still-healing wounds carrying Temene during that long, arduous trek, collapses.
The cause is devastating, severe blood loss. And what makes this so gut-wrenchingly tragic is the shocking hidden sacrifice Peter made.
A nurse reveals the detail that Peter had used an infant's diaper, a common item from a convenience store, attached to his lower back under his clothing to absorb the blood loss.
He had silently continued the entire journey, hiding the extent of his injury, knowing the cost, tearing his stitches in the process, all for her safety.
He went through the entire trek, carrying her, masking his own near-fatal condition. Peter is rushed to the ICU in a critical coma due to severe blood loss and the risk of brain damage. The victory came, but at the ultimate, personal, physical cost.
The novel's powerful conclusion shifts from action back to philosophy, and it's framed by Zavin's broader context of activism. Before we even address Peter's fate, we have to briefly revisit the real-world atrocities that are referenced, just to tie them back to Tamina's moral clarity.
Zavin provides these chilling details in his author's note, and they're designed to ground the novel's stakes in reality. Over 200 Baha'is executed since 1979, the systemic denial of education.
And the specific horror of the 10 Baha'i women hanged in Shiraz in 1983. He also details the ongoing persecution of women executions, 31 women in 2024 in Iran, public floggings, and forced child marriages.
So the critique returns to that paradox of selective outrage one last time. Zavin directly challenges the prioritization of the wage gap over executions and child marriage, especially when some in the West choose to label these atrocities as just cultural identity.
His closing challenge is provocative. He asks, who are the real heroes? The men who protest alongside women against the true existential threats, or those who focus only on comfortable Western issues? He forces us to define courage beyond convenience.
The epilogue, which is set 6 years later, finds Peter physically recovered but completely broken psychologically. He is haunted, depressed, isolated, and living in squalor. The war may have been won, but the aftermath has just destroyed him.
And yet, justice is finally served. Grayson Hawkins is being extradited from Panama, which is a testament to Bob's relentless investigative work.
But Peter can't celebrate the victory. He tells Betty that Bob is gone. He succumbed to his illness. The man Peter trusted more than himself, his Archie Goodwin, didn't live to see justice served.
And that leaves Peter truly alone with his profound regret.
In a truly heartbreaking moment, Peter gives Betty the silver play button, that symbol of his former ambitious life. He tells her the Brazilian Parrot is dead.
Signifying that the person he was, the journalist, the activist, the protective hero, is just gone.
The sources really emphasize his despair. He feels that he sees his best friend Betty for the last time, convinced he has nothing left to offer the world or the people he cares about.
And this is where we have to spend some time analyzing the true tragedy. Peter's ultimate confession, it doesn't center on the physical injuries or the danger. It's about his emotional failure.
He tells Betty, I won the war, but then I lost the peace.
Why was he afraid of the peace? We have to connect this back to his initial burnout. Peter was a man of action, defined by conflict, loyalty, immediate protective responses.
Stability, long-term commitment, simple, profound human happiness with Temina. These were things he just didn't know how to handle.
It's a classic case of a war hero suffering from a fear of stability. It's a form of PTSD. He admits he was afraid of simple human happiness with Temene, and he actively pushed her away.
He lost her light and his own purpose in the process. He created distance because distance was safer than vulnerability.
His greatest failure, in his own mind, wasn't the coma or the danger. It was his inability to accept happiness, his own cowardice in letting her go once the fight was over.
And this self-indictment connects directly back to Zaven's interview, when Zaven was asked what single sentence Peter would say to Timony if he had the chance.
Zaven replied with two powerful words that encapsulate the entire emotional weight of the epilogue.
Forgive me.
And that phrase confirms it. Peter's physical sacrifices were overshadowed by his ultimate moral failure, the failure to love and to accept the vulnerability of being loved once the danger had passed. He was a hero capable of profound sacrifice in war, but incapable of surviving the ensuing peace.
What an emotionally exhausting journey. We started with burnout and internal chaos, moved through a targeted attack and political corruption, and ended with a hero who collapses not in battle, but in the peace he actively rejected.
Yeah, we trace the complexity of the Baha'i struggle, the shocking corruption of an American senator, and the devastating personal tragedy of the man who won the war but lost the light.
The novel forces us to confront uncomfortable truths, both about global activism and personal responsibility. It reminds us that true knowledge requires seeing past the easy headlines.
Questioning why the FBI was so desperate to cling to that facile Iran theory instead of looking at the arrogant domestic corruption of Senator Hawkins.
And it forces us to acknowledge that profound sacrifice often happens silently, hidden beneath a forced smile and a heavy jacket, like Peter's trek through the forest, concealing a near-fatal wound.
The greatest battles are often the ones we fight alone, and sometimes the most challenging victory is simply accepting the peace we've fought so hard to secure.
And so, we'll leave you with this final provocative thought, drawn straight from the wreckage of Peter Rue's life.
Peter blamed himself for being unable to handle peace, and he pushed away the one person who could have anchored him. So the question is, what unspoken feels of happiness, stability, or simple vulnerability keep us, too, from claiming the hard-won victories we've already earned? What peace are you currently losing?